Hi everyone, welcome to another video. I like to think that portable power stations slash solar power generators or stations, whatever you want to call them, I think they fit into four distinct categories. So you have the smaller units, which are generally 150 to 300 watts. Then you have your 5 to 600 watts. And then you have your 1,000 to 1,200 watts. And then you have what I like to consider scalable units for the home, which go 2, 3, 4,000 watts, right? So I think for most people, at least these days with the way prices are, the sweet spot for price, performance, and portability is right in the 5 to 600 watt range. So I happen to have one of those right here to show you today. So let me get this out of the way quickly before we move on. As always, if you like my content, please like the video. Please subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when I have new ones coming out. And as always, if you think somebody you know or love could benefit from the information I provide, please share the video. And anything I use in the video, I will put links to in the description below. Okay, now let's move on. So what we have today is the FF Power CN505. It's 614 watt hours capacity, Life PO4 battery pack. It's got inverter in it that's capable of 500 watts continuous or 1,000 watts peak. It's a pure sine inverter. It's got pass-through charging. It has all the common input and output ports. I'll show you those in more detail in just a second. So let me just tell you, this thing is built like a freaking tank. It's compact, it's heavy, and it's got an aluminum casing, which is really nice. I'm so curious about the ruggedness of this unit. I'm actually going to drop test it later. I've never done that with any portable power station that I've reviewed or tried or tested, so that's going to be a first for me. I hope it holds up because, spoiler alert, I really like this unit. Okay, so before we get into the details, let me tell you what comes in the box. Obviously, you get the power station. You get this really nice clam semi-hard shell case that holds all the charging apparatuses and the manual. So obviously you get a little user manual with all the specifications and directions and warnings, etc. in it. And then, like I said, you get this case, and what comes in the case is a car lighter adapter to charge the unit, a solar panel connector to charge the unit. It's got the MC4 connectors on it. And you get a 100 watt AC charger, plug into the wall, plug into the front of the unit, charge it up. Now this has a 100 watt MPPT charge controller inside, so the max you can charge it with is 100 watts. So let's get a little more up close and personal with this unit. I know you can't see it from there, the camera's kind of far away, so first things first, I have to show you the light. It's a little square LED light on the back, which is kind of nice. It's not real obtrusive. You click it once, it's got low. Click it again, it goes to medium. Click it a third time, it goes to high. Click it again, it goes off. There's no SOS on this unit, which not a deal breaker for me. I've never used that in the past, and if I'm going anywhere I'm going to use this where I might need an SOS, I probably have a flashlight or something on me to do that anyway. So, all right, let's get up close and let me show you a little more detail about the FF Power CN505. So I got my handy dandy pointer, my construction pencil. So what we have here, first thing is the power button. Press and hold it for about 2 seconds and it comes on. The screen is small, but it's very nice. It's crisp, it's clear. It's got just about everything you could want on it. You have your wattage indicator. That's your wattage value. And you have an output, and you also have an input that lights up top. So what it does, instead of showing both at the same time, it toggles back and forth. If you're doing pass-through charging, say you're charging it at the same time that you're using it, you'll get your value here for output, and then it'll toggle up and it'll display input, and then it'll show the value for that. So it just goes back and forth about every 3 seconds or 2 seconds. This is a small unit, so the display doesn't take up a lot of real estate, which I like. It keeps the form factor really small and compact. So it's also got your hours to empty or full, and it's got a nice little battery indicator. It shows you your percentage capacity remaining. So on the other side of the screen, we have the input jack. That accepts 12 to 24 volts, 100 watt maximum. And then right below that, we have a little reset button. I guess if this thing goes wonky, you can press the reset button and it resets the firmware inside and sets it back to default. Down below that, we have our DC. hit the button to turn your DC outputs on. And then you have your two DC jacks, your output jacks. Those are 12 volts, 4 amps each. And you also have your car accessory port. And altogether here, your DC circuitry is capable of outputting 12 volts to 10 amps. And then you have your USB section. You have your PD 60 watt, which is output only. You have your 5 volt, 2.4 amp regular USB A's. And then you have your quick charge USB A 3 amp output ports. Now on this side, you have your AC button, and you have two 110 volt outlets. One is grounded, one is strictly two-prong. These two receptacles combined are capable of outputting a continuous 500 watts or a peak of 1,000 watts. It's aluminum. It feels like some kind of alloy, aluminum alloy. It feels almost like plastic, but it's not. Like I said, I think it's pretty rugged. And then you have your handle, which appears to be some kind of a molded rubber. It's got these metal extensions that I'm sure are screwed down in here, and then they extend, and then they grab in here. So this reminds me a lot of some ruggedized test equipment that I used to use in the field. It sits down flat for the most part when you're not using it, and then it gives you enough clearance to put your hand underneath it. Just enough so it's not obtrusive. So for any of you who have seen my other videos, you probably already know this, but let me explain for anybody watching this for the first time how I test power stations. I do bench test these units. It's kind of in my blood. I'm an engineer. However, I don't show that on camera. I do make sure that the equipment that I test is within tolerance of the advertised specifications within the manual. I also do a functionality check to make sure all the buttons work, the firmware works, the ports work. And if there is a problem that I find while I'm testing, then I will definitely make that known within the summary at the end of the video. I prefer on my channel to put these into real world scenarios to give you an idea of what you can actually accomplish with them if you get yourself put into an emergency situation, or if you want to go camping, how you can actually use these in the real world. So of course, this is a 500 watt unit. It's capable of running small under 500 watt appliances around your house. So you can run TVs for a few hours, you can run gaming systems, you can run fans, you can run small cooking appliances, and you can keep your internet running with your modem / Wi-Fi router. So this will do all that, but what I'm going to do today is use a portable travel kettle that uses approximately 500 watts, so it'll push it right up to the limit to make myself some green tea. And then I'm going to use this to power a 3 cubic foot dorm fridge, is what I call them. And the reason I'm going to use a 3 cubic foot fridge, because if you had a power outage that lasted 2-3 days, this size unit would not be capable of running my full-size fridge / freezer that I have in my kitchen for that length of time. What I would do under those circumstances is take anything that may spoil that I want to eat over the next few days and move it to the small 3 cubic foot fridge freezer that I have out in my garage. And that will give us a better understanding of how this power station can help us during emergencies. So let's get techie. Okay everyone, first thing we're going to do is tea time to get a little caffeine in us, to get this test started. So what I have is the FF Power portable power station. I have a small travel kettle, it's silicone. I'll put the link to this below, it's really handy, I use this a lot. This pulls about 500 watts, 475 around there. So I've filled it up with water, I have it off, and I plugged it in. So let's turn our power on. Turn our AC power on, and then we'll get our hot water started. See the power indicator's on. We're pulling about 420 watts. You can see it estimates we can go for approximately 1.2 hours at that rate, and we are at 98% capacity right now. So while this is actually brewing, it takes 5 or 6 minutes usually. So while it's heating up, before it comes to a boil, I will get my tea ready to go. So I got my tea bag out, got it in my cup, and I've been sitting here waiting patiently for this to start boiling. It's been about 4 minutes, and I noticed the fan just kicked on. Now I can feel the air movement. It feels like it's sucking it in through these other vents, and then it's pushing it out the main vent in the back. Okay, so it took 6 minutes. The water started boiling, steam was coming out, and then it automatically turned off, which is nice. We're down to 0 watts consumption, and we're at 90% for capacity. So running that for about 6 minutes used about 10% of our battery, but that is the cost of a cup of tea these days, I guess. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this off, I'm going to recharge it, and then we're going to move on to the refrigerator test. Okay, so this is the fridge in question. Like I said, I keep this in the garage, and it's generally filled with drinks, some condiments left over from fast food places, etc. I have unplugged this from the grid. Let's turn our power station on. Turn our AC on. And we're going to plug in here. So it's about noon right now, and the power station is using its algorithm and constantly adjusting the estimated time left. The time remaining is beneficial if you're using something that draws a continuous load, but the refrigerator is going to kick on and off. So we're going to use a regular clock to measure our time. So I will check back periodically, and I will let you know how it's doing. Okay, time out. Can you see what's written on my face? I know the camera's a little far away, but in case you can't, it's disappointment. For some reason, the FF power station and my 3 cubic foot mini fridge did not get along. It failed on 2 separate attempts to run the refrigerator, even though the refrigerator is within the tolerance of the specifications of this unit. So I've actually seen this a lot in my career, where 2 pieces of equipment that are supposed to work together just don't. And it could be something as minute as 1 component in either one of the pieces of equipment that's just slightly out of tolerance, and they just don't get along. It's kind of like using a USB drive on one computer on your laptop, and then you take it to your home computer and it doesn't work for some reason, right? It's just not compatible, although it should be. Or another even better analogy that a lot of people can probably relate to, is you take your boyfriend or girlfriend home to meet your family who you also love, and they don't get along. You know, it's happened to me. It can happen to anybody, right? So sometimes it's not either entity's fault, they just don't work. And at first I was a bit disappointed, but this is actually a good thing, because now we can actually use this as a learning lesson for everybody who's watching, right? When you buy a piece of equipment, make sure when you get it that you try it in the scenario that you're going to use it. So for instance, if I was counting on this power station to run that refrigerator, as soon as I got it, I'd unpack it, I'd charge it up, and I would try it on the fridge, just to make sure it works. And when you get put in that bad situation and you break this out, you know it's going to work. So does that affect my opinion of the FF Power CN505? Not really, because I've seen this enough in my career to know that both pieces of equipment can be solid performers, and sometimes they just don't work together. And this power station has done everything else I've asked of it up to this point. I'll go over that in my summary. So I mentioned earlier, because this is aluminum and it seems somewhat ruggedized, I wanted to drop test it. And I think that's a good test, really, for just about any power station that you buy. Because most likely, if you're using this camping, tailgating, etc., this is going to get dropped sometime. You're going to be out camping, and your crazy uncle's going to go after a football, and he's going to hit the picnic table, and he's going to knock it over along with all your burgers and everybody's beers. Or it could be dropped off of the back of a tailgate, handing it from one person to the other. You know, so it could take a 4-foot drop onto solid earth. So that's what I'm going to test. So let's get to it and see if this thing survives. So that didn't take long, but it was very stressful, because when you have a couple $100 in your hand and you let it drop onto the ground, it can leave a pit in your stomach. But this came through with flying colors. I brought it in and I retested all the features. Everything works fine. Software, all the ports. There's no damage to the case, no cracks or anything. The fans work. Everything seemed to survive the 4-foot drop. If this does take a tumble off a picnic table or somebody's tailgate, or it gets dropped handing it from one person to the other, it's a pretty good chance it's going to survive, so I'm happy with that. So what are my final thoughts on the FF Power CN505? This thing is a rock solid unit, it really is. I did have that little hiccup where it wouldn't run the refrigerator compressor, but I did try it after my drop test. I wanted to make sure everything was working fine. So I did hook up my chest freezer to it, and it ran that fine overnight. So it actually liked that compressor, it just didn't like the one in my fridge. So like I said, I've seen that in the past, not a big deal to me. It handled everything else that I threw at it with no issues at all. The firmware was solid throughout, the capacity was accurate, the BMS cutoffs performed flawlessly. It charged within the allotted times via solar, via the DC in my car, and the AC power brick. And like I said, it handled everything else that I threw at it. I made tea with a small travel kettle. I cooked a few meals. I charged all my small electronics, 2 phones, 2 tablets. My laptop, I ran on it for 3 or 4 hours, no problems with that. I ran a TV, played some video games on it with my Famicom computer, Japanese import. I ran fans with it, and it survived a 4-foot drop. And I'm actually so confident in its abilities after testing it that I'm going to send it away to a family member. So if anything happens there, they'll have some power to fall back on. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned something today. Remember, test your equipment when you get it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye.